Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Listing Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. It's an anniversary edition. No, not of the podcast, but on Bruce Springsteen anniversaries. I am very honored to be having not one, but two guests. The Springsteen blogger in the social medias, Peter Cianca. Say hi, Peter.
Hello, Jesse. It's wonderful to be here as always.
Yes, and a new guest. So, Chris, welcome to Set Listing Bruce.
Hi, Jesse. It's good to be here.
I am so excited. Peter and I talk all the time. I got someone new to bore with my stories. So, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
I'm a writer, a reporter based in the Boston area, and basically just grew up on Bruce. I think Pete and I worked together during, in our day shift jobs, but I think Pete put it best. He said I'm the rare millennial Springsteen loving freak, really. But I grew up with it. I got into it. Bruce was my first concert when I was 8 years old on the Rising tour. So indoctrinated from an early age. Pete has been gracious enough to invite me to write for Blogness from time to time. I really still have to take him up on that offer, but I think that's about as much as my credentials, if I have any, I could say. But happy to be here.
I'll point out, Jesse, quickly that Chris has been at our place of work longer than I have. And so when I first got the job 3 years ago, you check all your future coworkers' Twitter accounts and, LinkedIn's, and, because you want to know what you're getting into. Is I hope I fit in here. And I came across Chris's, and in his Twitter bio, it said, can talk about Springsteen all day long. I said, that's it. There's the Bruce connection. I'm in.
I now have a work buddy. Yes, absolutely. Well, Chris, I am so thrilled you're here. We'll have to have you on and we'll do a whole episode sometimes the way we do. But we are talking about anniversaries. And Peter, since you have the research handy, this year, 2022, has significant anniversaries for Mr. Springsteen, doesn't he?
It does, and it just sort of occurred to me gradually, because I had written, Chris and I had been talking about the 15th anniversary of Magic, which just happened a couple of weeks ago, and we both, it's an album we both enjoy and we feel doesn't maybe get as much love as it deserves when people consider the Springsteen pantheon. And then I somehow, I just started going through the list, and I realized, if you consider like albums that with a 0 or a 5 at the end of the year to be sort of landmark anniversaries, we've got, starting with the oldest, Nebraska is 40 years old this year. Tunnel of Love is 35 years old. That was just also a couple of weeks ago. Human Touch and Lucky Town are 30 years old on the dot. That was in March. The Rising just turned 20. And Wrecking Ball was 10, plus, of course, Magic at 15, which we just mentioned. So there's something about the 2s and the 7s that Bruce really likes putting out albums in those years, I guess. And as we all know, he did not used to put albums out with the frequency that he does today whenever the mood seems to strike him. So we just lucked out that there's a lot of anniversaries. So we had wanted to talk about Magic since that's sort of what brought this together, but we had to at least acknowledge all of these significant releases.
Yeah. So when you told me that, I went down a rabbit hole. And so I have gone through Wikipedia, which is never wrong. And I have gone through every Bruce Springsteen official release, whether it's a greatest hits, a compilation, if it, the reissuing all the albums, everything together, and I have put what month it's released.
Oh, that's tough.
So you guys take a guess. There is 1 month that has never had a release. And there is another month that has had the most. So Before we get to Magic, actually, we're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming album, but just for fun, do you guys want to make a guess?
Oh, that's tough. That is tough.
I'm trying to. I'm gonna screw it up. I feel like maybe August has the most.
Okay.
Or October actually. Well, we know that Tunnel of Love was October, and wait, was Magic? But Magic was September actually, right? The end of September. So that.
And Nebraska was September. They just did the vinyl
Yes,
release, right?
Yeah, Nebraska was October. I would say maybe October. It might have.
So let's think again. Think about if you include box sets.
Oh, they tend to come out in November, right?
Exactly.
Or Christmas.
Yes, there are been 9 releases in November. Wild and the Innocent, Springsteen Live, Ghost of Tom Joad, Tracks, Essential Bruce Springsteen, The Promise, the album Collection 1, No Nukes, and Only the Strong.
Right, because you got to move that product.
Right.
for the holidays.
April is next with 6 in concert, MTV Plugged, 18 tracks, Devils and Dust, Seeger Sessions, Collection 1973 to 2012, American Beauty. And I guess I hit the wrong thing up here. And so, yes, April, and May is the only month he's never released anything.
May.
I don't know why.
That's surprising.
Yeah.
So what came out in February? Do you have that handy?
Yes, I do. I will go through. January was Greetings, Greatest Hits, Working on a Dream, High Hopes.
Okay.
February was another Greatest Hits, like maybe the Walmart special or something, and the Hammersmith film and thing. Yep.
Fair enough.
March, Human Touch, Lucky Town, Blood Brothers, Live in New York City, Wrecking Ball. April, we talked about. May, nothing. June, Darkness, Born in the USA, Live in Dublin, Western Stars. July is The Rising and Magic Highlights, which really, but it was official. August, Born to Run and Chimes of Freedom, same thing, Chimes of Freedom. September, Nebraska, Magic and Chapter and Verse. October, River, Tunnel of Love, Letter to You. November, we mentioned Wild and the Incident, Live, Ghost of Tom Joad, Tracks, Essential Springsteen, The Promise, Album Collection 1, No Nukes, Only the Strong. And December, Ties That Bind, the box set, and Broadway came out in December.
Which they probably just couldn't get their act together in time to get it out.
Yeah. So once I saw this, I went, well, of course, November, because they want to get it out for Christmas for people to do. Yeah.
And I could think of at least one Twitter user who is going to predict Tracks 2 will come out in this November.
He was rising, or they were rising my blood pressure so much I had to mute them. It just was driving me crazy. That no matter what we got
all the time.
No matter what we got, well, it is at Tracks 2, but anyway, I'll go crazy. Yeah. So we are getting, not Tracks 2, but we're getting an album. You were one of the, Peter, one of the first people to talk about it. So I'm going to start with you, Chris. Are you excited about this new album? The couple of songs we've heard, has your opinion changed since you've heard a couple of songs?
A few things. Look, anytime Bruce does anything, I'm already like, there's a baseline level of excitement that starts at. It's just, let's just acknowledge that. But I was in the camp of just kind of like initially thinking, well, why does Bruce need to do a covers album? And then immediately it was like, I think Pete was probably the first one to be like, well, there was the Seeker Sessions. I'm always excited to see where he's taking us next as his audience, but having him kind of do other people's songs for an entire album was also kind of muted that. I have to say that first, which one came first? I'm trying to remember I can't remember the name of the song. The first release off of
Yeah,
the
I
album,
do.
the
Yeah,
first single.
there's love.
Yeah, yeah, they're all
Yeah,
yelling at us right now because
yeah, they're
yeah,
all screaming.
yes.
Uh, well, that one that was released actually just a few days before my wedding. I just got married a few weeks ago. So I took it as a really good omen, and I threw it into, like, I had a DJ play it at the wedding, and it was just really fun to hear that. So yeah, I've been swayed a little bit. Like, I always love the soul inspiration in Bruce's music. I'm not someone who's like listens to soul beyond, a few of the bigger hits.
Mhm,
Some of the Motown acts, which is more on the pop side of the '60s than real
mhm.
soul. But I don't know. I think that for Bruce, I would, if anything, I would want to. I might want to go the opposite way and see him do this album and bring us in on other, like, if you're going to do a volume of soul classics, I actually want to see him do like a folk volume, and I would want to see maybe early rock stuff that influenced him. I don't know. I don't think I was thinking so much about coming into this call on Magic that I haven't had a lot of time to put my
No,
thoughts together on this new one.
no, you did great. That's great. How about you, Peter?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and to Chris's point, I think the cover does say Volume One, so I guess we're getting more of something eventually. Um, but yeah, I kind of feel the same way. It's hard to gin up the same level of excitement when it's they aren't his words. And even Seeger Sessions, which at the end of the day, I guess as it evolved, he put out the American Land edition and then the live, it became more of a Springsteen project. There were songs he wrote and lyrics he rewrote. The first, iteration of it was much more of a covers album. This seems maybe, from what I've heard, maybe just a little too reverent. He doesn't seem to be putting a stamp on them so much as really like paying tribute. And I think I'm willing to follow the guy wherever he wants to go. As I mentioned to Chris, we just had we're both big Dylan fans too, and he put out literally 5 albums worth of Sinatra covers, which nobody expected, and I don't think he did it wringing his hands together thinking, ooh, I'm going to make oodles of money on this. Clearly that's where his muse brought him at that moment. And then he put out a terrific original album right after. So I think if this is what Bruce wants and needs to do, I always get a kick. I don't know if kick is the right word, but, and we won't get into the whole, well, you're the host. We can get into whatever you want, but I don't think we need to get into the ticket controversy. But I just find it interesting when people like resent somebody for putting something out that you don't want or need, and then just don't buy it. Wait for the next one. People are like, now I have to buy this soul album. You jerk. It's like
Yeah,
that just
it is this
wait.
completist that
Yes, yes,
the comic book industry has made lots of money off this, that
yes,
I have to buy
yes.
every crossover on that. So I would always had joked about, man, I'd love to see Bruce Springsteen sings the songs of Johnny Cash, or
Mhm.
that a lot of times other artists will do. And Willie Nelson just will like, I feel like doing songs of Haggard, so I'm going to do Rural Haggard or something. I would love to hear him do a country album. I would love to have him do a gospel album. So I'm okay with whatever he wants to do. I do, and I just put our toe in it, but I was amazed that he's going to be on Howard Stern. And the immediate first thought was, well, he better address the ticket controversy. Howard better ask. And I was like, okay, are we ever going to let this go? I just,
No.
it's just, it is, you know, he has, he has, he has viled the Springsteen church. He has made it horrible, and I can never forgive him, is what a lot of people feel. And I'm like, can we just move on? No, Jesse, we can't. So I
Yeah.
just have I stick my head up. I say, no, it's okay. We should be happy. And then I duck down real quick.
Yeah, it
Well,
is.
I
Yeah, go
Please.
on,
go
Chris.
go ahead, Pete. I was just gonna say, I do wonder if, you know, Howard wanted Bruce for ages on his show, and it makes me wonder though, like, because the Springsteen Landau camp isn't stupid. I wonder if the Ticketmaster thing was one of the conditions on the do not ask list. You know, because Howard's gonna ask. There's a controversy, he's gonna find it, and this was the biggest controversy Bruce has had in, I don't know, since maybe the 41
Driving drunk.
shots.
Yeah, or driving
Yeah,
drunk.
or driving drunk.
Yeah, that was ended up not being
drunk
anything.
and quotes.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Right. It's like all of Bruce's fans drive drunk all the time. They didn't really care
Yeah,
about
Super Bowl commercial, where that was it, yeah, I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah,
If you- Go ahead.
it goes back to his whole, conversation with the audience, with his audience, and the fact that he didn't say anything and is yet to say anything. And that Howard is, like Chris said, is known for, he doesn't shy away from sensitive topics typically. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this is their way of saying, you know what, we got to deal with this somehow. Go on Stern, say, yeah, I couldn't believe how that went, or whatever. I had no idea the tickets were going to be so high. But what's done is done, and and then move on to the next topic, and at least feel like he addressed it in a large forum. Or maybe it won't be mentioned, and Bruce is counting on this to just go away. But I think, it is still, we still see. Somebody just posted today or yesterday about a column they wrote for a local paper somewhere about how they've been a fan for 40 years and can't afford the tickets now, and blah blah blah. But I personally have moved on. I have tickets in hand. I'm flying to Washington to see him because I couldn't get tickets in Boston, so I'm making a vacation out of it, and I can't wait to see him. And it is what it is.
Yeah, I have Dallas, I have Houston, I have Tulsa, and I didn't get Austin because I didn't get a code, but I was planning to get it, and my wife about a week or so ago, I like Austin. Like, okay, I guess I can try to get 2 tickets to Austin now so we can make a little vacation out of it. So yeah, my only point is I don't know what he can say that will make anyone feel better. And I said that it is a no-win scenario, and people don't care. They're like, fine, he's worth $500 million. So what if he's in a no-win scenario? Okay, just have a realistic, what are you going to say? And I go back to, I think the only thing that would have people happy is everyone had gotten the tickets they want in the section they want at the price they wanted to pay.
Right.
Because I've had people say, well, I only go to the pit. And so I didn't, if I couldn't get in the pit, I don't want the show. Okay. Once again, you want the shows you want at the section you want at the price you want to pay. And it's just crazy. So we'll see.
I mean, the genie's already out of the bottle too, in the sense that I haven't been following it as much, but I know that the Blink-182 fans out there are feeling the hurt.
Yeah. And yeah, it would be nice to go, and what the heck, it'd be nice if someone like, holy shit, Howard, I had no effing idea that this would be crazy. And then once it starts, you can't stop.
Yeah.
Because now that if I go back and change it, then everyone who already had paid too much is going to be screaming bloody murder at me, and,
I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that happen, where he just sort of mea culpas it and moves on. And, I mean, who knows what that will mean for the next one when they do it the exact same way, if there is one. And I think that is what it comes down to. 2 people are like, well, I have to go. It might be the last one.
Yeah.
I wish we didn't charge so much money, but
it
is what it is. But he still has his amazing catalog behind him.
Yes.
As we will discuss tonight.
Yes, we do. All right. So to give you guys a little background, my first Springsteen show was 2002. That took me from being a casual fan to a fanatic. Devils and Dust will always have a special place in my heart because it was the first CD that had came after I had seen him live, and it was the first show I went where I had done my homework. I knew every song of Devils and Dust, and he was going to play that. I was going to be happy, and did not care for the singer sessions because he did not sing them the way my dad sang them. I just recently figured that out. Like, my dad sang Fergie Winton Corton a certain way, and Bruce didn't sing it, therefore it's wrong. So so when Magic came out, I loved it. I loved it. Girls in the Summer Clothes and I'll Work for Your Love would make definitely my top 20, maybe top 10, two of my favorite songs. So Pete, I'm going to talk to you. Magic, what's your feeling? What were you thinking? And let's share a little bit.
Well, I remember when it came out. Like, I loved The Rising. I just loved that it existed. I love that he had didn't shy away from tackling singing and talking to us about 9/11. But at the end of the day, it didn't necessarily feel like the Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band album I think I was hoping for, and that a lot of people were hoping for, since it had been so long since they recorded together. And I remember somebody at the time, and I wish I could remember which critic said, it sounded like a really good John Mellencamp album, because he had a lot of fiddles in there, and it was like, yeah, it doesn't really, it's really good, but it doesn't necessarily feel like Bruce to me. So when I got Magic, it was tight, it kicks off, in full rock mode, with Radio Nowhere. And it felt to me like Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band album. Not necessarily, I mean, it didn't sound like Born to Run, but nothing had sounded like Born to Run since Born to Run, but it had the feeling, it had the, Clarence sax solos, it, you could hear Roy's piano. I mean, I know, people make a lot out of, Brendan O'Brien's production, and that it sounds too muddy, or that all the musicians are sort of smushed together a little too much. And I think there is something to that, but there was enough there to make you feel like it was real, and it was about something. As I think a lot of the best Bruce albums are. If it seems now, the things that Bruce was upset about in the Bush administration seem almost quaint compared to what we're dealing with now. But at the time, it did seem like Bush was, that administration was really taking advantage of the country and making a lot of really bad decisions. And this, sort of dealt with it head on in that way that Bruce does so well, through characters and through imagery, and, and really, sort of making a stand. So the combination of those two things got me really excited, and actually got sort of prompted me to start my blog, which came out. So the album came out in September, and I launched Blogness in November, and the rest was history.
Yeah, you've told that before, but that's a direct cause and effect. So
Yeah.
it absolutely. It is interesting to get into the political world just for a minute. My lovely bride, mainlines MSNBC, and we are blueberries in a strawberry patch here in Texas. And it's like, we take George Bush in a minute. I mean, at least we know everything he did because he thought it was best for the country. So end of my political rant. Chris, how about you? Magic. What were your thoughts, and share a little bit?
Yeah, Magic was really a special album to me. So kind of what I was saying in my introduction, my first ever concert in my life was Springsteen. I'm from Long Island. My dad took me and my brother to see Springsteen at the Meadowlands in the middle of his, like, I don't know, however 10 or 14 dates he played there that summer in 03. So The Rising was really the first, I remember my dad playing that in the car. We listened to a whole thing all the way through all the time. Being only 9, 10, 11, whenever Devils and Dust came out, didn't really, the adult themes on that record didn't really speak to me. But Magic was something else, because I remember when Radio Nowhere was released, my dad walked in pick me up one day from my mom's place, and he sat down at our family computer was right near the door. And early days of YouTube, he fired it up, probably buffered for like 10 minutes, and just blasted out the computer speakers and turned to us and said, "He's back." Because and I know people have different feelings about how Rodeo Nowhere is just Jenny. The guitar riff is not his best. It's just fun. Like, it's fun. I think that album really balances the serious with the fun, which is something that Bruce sometimes struggles to do. You usually get really intense Bruce, or like something that's a little too undercooked. I think it's its most coherent record. Not coherent, but what's the word I'm searching for? Just like complete in its sound. It is, to Pete's point, an E Street record. I think you hear everyone playing at their best there, and I dare say it's actually his most, to what we were talking about with politically. I was thinking about this earlier. I think it's his most relevant songwriting of this century in this current moment that we're in. There are a lot of political songs on there. There's Long Walk Home, which I would say is probably, in my opinion, his strongest songwriting of the last 2 decades, in the messages he's trying to say, and it's the way he has committed to this kind of Steinbeckian, we're in that small town. It could be the same town as my hometown. Like, it's Bruce Town, USA. Like, we're always revisiting the same people. And what he has to say in that song remains relevant today. Second only to maybe Ghost of Tom Joad. I think Youngstown, side tangent here, I think Youngstown is probably the song of today that everyone's sleeping on when it comes to the MAGA movement. But Magic was really the record to me. It was almost his sophomore record for a young fan at my age, and it delivered. Living in the Future is another one that I don't think gets its due enough, for mixing some of that disillusionment of that era with kind of the hey, yeah, but whatever kind of disconnectedness of pop culture at that time from the politics of that moment. And of course, I was thinking a lot about Magic again last year when we saw the withdrawal from Afghanistan. There's a lot of writing on that record talking about soldiers and having to deal with a war that they don't understand. Of course, Bruce has a lot of experience writing about that already. But I do think that part of that record gets kind of overlooked as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I do love Long Walk Home. In fact, today I was at work, and I pulled up YouTube, and I wish I could give credit, but one of the many YouTube playlists had Magic Live. So they had put together all the songs performed live, and I just threw it on play, and I was working, and I was thinking, wow, it's a really good album, and all the songs, because to me, there are songs, and it's going to be different for everyone, that it's on every album. You go, I could skip that one. Right. And what I would skip, if you would go, oh no, wait, that's one of the best songs ever. You can't skip that. But in this one, I was like, I don't know if I'd skip this one if I wanted to listen to the whole album, if I was going for that. And I do think it brings us on a journey. I was really listening to Magic, and the introduction was, it's not about magic, it's about a trick, about and I'm a big fan of Penn and Teller, and in Penn Jillette talks about his in his podcast, he says magic used to be, and Jerry Seinfeld talked about it. Hey, pick a card. There's a card. You're an idiot. Get out of here. And they've made a career out of telling people the truth, yet still entertaining them. because they're not trying to lie, and they're telling you this is a trick, it's a trick, and now we're going to do this. And I love that idea that he's saying, I'm distracting you while I'm doing something that you really would not be happy. And I think that is very much today. As we're recording this, it's the end of October. I am not going to make any judgments. I know a lot of people are going to vote the way they want to vote because they're worried about inflation and job situations and foreign borders and all kinds of other things that concern them. And then there's other people that are going to vote similar to me because I'm really concerned about civil rights, and I'm concerned about where this country is heading, and I do not like some of the trends we are going to with about gay marriage and women's right to choose and all these other very liberal supposedly systems, even though polls say that majority are gun control and all these things. But we're distracted because, oh my goodness, Beto O'Rourke wants to take away your guns. And that's I watch newspaper, I hear radio ads all the time here in Texas that they're distracting you. They have the magic trick. Look, let me pull this coin out of behind your ear. Thoughts as I got a little political?
No, I think, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And the track magic is interesting. I feel like it's, it feels almost like a moody interlude as opposed to a fully formed song to my ears. But it sets the tone and the message of that particular track sort of permeates the whole rest of the album. And it, and that theme, sort of underlying everything. But I don't think you could. I think, as Chris pointed out, sort of in the way it brings together, even songs like "Living in the Future," which is about a serious subject, in which he notoriously did in concert would give his little spiel about illegal wiretapping. And that was one of his few. So he has got this reputation somehow over the years. Oh, I don't, go to Springsteen spends half his concert, talking politics. Which I think that little 45-second spiel before "Living in the Future" is the longest I've ever heard him speak of anything even remotely political from the stage. So I don't know how that happened, but regardless, the song is lively. It's that E Street Soul sound. It's wonderful to listen to. It's actually fun to listen to. It's some of his most clever lyrics, I think. I'm a big Elvis Costello fan, and the lyrics to that song immediately struck me as those kind of very clever plays on words and imagery that Elvis does. I just think, between that and girls in their summer clothes. And Jesse, I know you're a big Pet Sounds fan. And I think, the fact that Bruce's 2 comes through in that song, it's really just, I think that the entire feel of it is perfect. And the sound is wonderful. And, some would argue he overdid it a little bit on his next album. Working on a dream, which sort of went a little bit over the top in that type of sort of lush pop, whatever you want to call it, 60s throwback orchestration. But on this album, the way it stands out on its own that way, it's I just think it was a real achievement for him.
Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I would say that Stevie probably wishes they can do more of the girls in summer clothes kind of sound. I feel like he kind of lives in that little pocket. Also, I kind of always appreciated how musically it sounded like a Brian Wilson daydream, but lyrically, the title of the song is stolen right from in a way from the Rolling Stones, which I always thought was kind of cool. Something I was thinking about, Jesse, when you were talking a little bit, you brought up Devils and Dust before. I feel like that record was kind of, you can kind of look at it almost as a prologue of sorts to kind of where he wanted us to be in Magic. And I know it's kind of teed up that way, but, I was just pulling up the lyrics to Devils and Dust and, thinking about how you were talking about listening to Magic and making those connections now about Magic being this trick and being distracted in our current political environment, and Devils and Dust, the song, almost feels like lyrically it fits right in there. So I kind of know, I think I'm saying is I gotta go back and listen to Devils and Dust to better appreciate Magic.
I've never thought about that prologue, but now then I agree with you. I kind of want to do a twofer. Speaking of the Beach Boys, when they were re-releasing their stuff on CD, they would do 2 albums at a time when you bought the CD. And so I like to do that. Yeah, I just was recently listened to the actual song Devils and Dust and was like, man, this is really good. This is not just lyrically, but musically, and the way it works together. And, the idea of, with God on our side, but God is on everyone thinks God's on their sides, and the complexity of that. Yeah. And Peter, absolutely. I've said over and over again that Girls in Their Summer Clothes is his tribute to Brian Wilson. It is a Beach Boys song done with an E Street Band arrangements. It's lush. I had recently someone tell me that's a song I hope Bruce never performs live again, because I just don't think they do it justice live. And I had to bite my tongue and I don't care how, I want to hear that live. I've only heard it live once. It's one of my favorite songs. And so, and the other thing is, I've often talked about, I'll Work for Your Love. I love the idea. I have been married over 35 years, and Linda and I, we talk about it when anyone asks us, wow, you guys have been married since 84. And we go, yeah, it's been a lot of work. I mean, we've had fun and we enjoy, but it's work to stay married, to happily married. And I like that idea. What others may want for free, I'll work for your love. So that's another one of my favorites.
Yeah, and I have to mention that my wife's name is Teresa. So I got her a shirt once that said "Pour me a drink, Teresa," and there's a short-lived company that made T-shirts out of any Bruce lyric you wanted to. Landau probably heard about it and had them shut down because they disappeared overnight one night. But I was able to get in that window and get her that T-shirt made.
That's nice.
And when we went to see him, one of the few times I made it into the pit in Mansfield, Mass, actually, we made a sign together for her that said, "Hi, Bruce, I'm Teresa. Pour me a drink." And that's the one that made it up to the stage, and he picked it up and he did sing it. But I've heard from people later who've seen him, because he did do it. I think he did it in Buffalo at Clarence's last show. He has done it a couple of times. People said it really it was a special feeling in the arena, because it's really buoyant, and it really it just captures a certain feeling that I'm not surprised he was able to put forward in concert. So I guess that maybe that's my if somebody said, okay, what do you want to hear him do in this next tour that he's not going to do, probably it would be that one.
Yeah, my wife's name is Linda, so I always joke about Linda let me be the one, and I always say I'm so glad Linda did let me be the one. So yes, that's great. So yeah, what female song do you want, Chris?
My wife's name's Allie, so it doesn't fit in anywhere. We don't have a song like that, but maybe on this soul record, maybe he can do me a favor.
Yeah, there we go. I love that. Yeah. All right. So to move us over, I think you guys have all said Magic was a really well done, complete album doing a theme. So Wrecking Ball is what he wanted it to be. He has said in his autobiography that he really thought that Wrecking Ball would get more traction, but to do the things. It is my wife's favorite album. It is the album that when she saw him the first time in 2002, she did not know any songs. He didn't play any of the hits during the Rising. The highlight was I think he did Working on the Highway, and she was happy about that. So when we were going to see him the second time, she said, I want to know what's happening. And she fell in love with Wrecking Ball. So that's her favorite album. I know there are songs that I don't think work on Wrecking Ball. So let's start with you, Chris. Thoughts on Wrecking Ball as we move to one of the other anniversaries? Came out March 2012, correct?
Yeah, I thought it was. Look, it's a solid album. I'm watching my tongue here because I know Pete has feelings about Wrecking Ball, but I always felt that it was a little too over the top for me. Like it was kind of like I get it, Bruce. You know, I think Magic works well in its messaging because it's subtle, it's scattered. You know, even Long Walk Home, he doesn't really nail it down until that last verse. You know, with the flag on the courthouse, and then yeah, you could say it's a little over the top, but I like that. But Wrecking Ball itself, conceptually. So I'm not a fan of the production of it. I think that there's some great songs on there. I think American Land is one of my favorites of his in the last 20 years. I remember watching when they did Wrecking Ball on, what was it? So I was at the end of the Working on a Dream tour in 2009. He started doing those shows where he'd play one full album through. And so I saw him at the Garden and he did The River. It was the first and only time at that point in time. We thought, we left and we're like, wow, this is so special. He'll never do that again. And then he made an entire tour doing
it, yes.
Yeah. But I want to say it was that one because the timeline works out. I think he opened with Wrecking Ball and he said it was a new song and it was right around the time they were tearing down Giant Stadium. And it was good, but we were kind of like, what is this? Like that song in itself, I feel like you feel like it's going to build up and it just doesn't. I want it to rock a little bit more. And the last thing I'll say is that We'll Take Care of Our Own, I think is a perfectly catchy song. If you're in the Boston area, GBH's Boston Public Radio uses some of it for their theme song. So you hear it a lot on the radio around here. But coming off of the lackluster Working on a Dream and that kind of being this follow-up, it solidified this sense in Bruce from the partisan side of things that he needed a 2012 re-election song because Working on a Dream was 2009 or 2008 for Obama. He needed a re-election song. So I didn't really appreciate the timeline of that and the context of that song. So honestly, all in all, I think it's great. I thought the Democrats did a nice thing by leaning into, didn't they play Land of Hope and Dreams or whatever after Biden's speech? I kind of thought that Biden should have used that song the entire time instead of the Rising on that campaign. But, you know, I don't get paid. I'm not on the campaign. But yeah, I don't know. I just kind of thought it was a little heavy-handed for its time. But I'll take it over High Hopes.
Well, that is definitely true. It's interesting because I never think of. I know it's on the studio version is on this album. I never think of Land of Hope and Dreams as a Wrecking Ball song. I think of it as a Live in New York City song, and same with American Skin, 41 Shots. I like the live versions of both of those better too. But having said that, I don't think there was a period there where I would have put it higher than Magic actually, because I love the theme of it. I liked the sound, and I liked how all the songs sort of sounded like they were of a piece, which reminded me of the way Dylan does it sometimes, where okay, this album's going to sound archaic or old timey or like I just got off a boat or whatever it is, and I like that it all felt like it was part of a bigger whole. that said, there were certain, I don't think, We Take Care of Our Own is a keeper necessarily. The songs in the middle sort of, this depression and, and I remember saying at the time, You've Got It sounds like it wandered in there off a late 80s Bob Seger album. Like they weren't necessarily the, Bruce standard that you were looking for, but I think most of the rest of the album, really worked for me in terms of talking about the times and the issues we were facing. And I love the muskets and the, found audio snippets. I loved the little rap in Rocky Ground. For whatever reason, it all spoke to me, or most of it did. We Are Alive, so soon after, that struck me as the Clarence song. So they're talking about, the people who leave us and how they're all still here with us. And so that meant a lot to me that way. And yeah, I think, I just loved the fact that he was getting on in years, and could still put out something that, was relevant and, could stand, if not with his absolute best work, certainly with, as a solid representation of what he was capable of, and that it could generate so much attention. I don't know if you remember when it came out. I think they released like a song a day or something, or a song, leading up to it, and there were tons of think pieces and, people evaluating the songs and, and interviews, and that may have been when he was on 60 Minutes. I don't remember exactly, but I felt like, wow, this guy is still relevant, and this proves it. And that's sort of where I came down on Wrecking Ball. And then High Hopes came out.
Yeah.
Okay, swing and a miss on that one.
So, and because I am very inactive in bootlegs, I had not heard a lot of the songs on High Hopes, and so I was not as disappointed in High Hopes as a lot of people were.
Yeah, and you know what? And I should clarify. I went back recently. At least half of High Hopes is actually quite good.
Yeah.
But the half that isn't really struck me as not good, and that's why I didn't
see. And this is your sword, is when I think of like, see, he could do a gospel album. He could do a gospel album. Yeah, I don't like You Got It, and I don't like This Depression, which is sad to say because Bruce was fighting depression, and I should be a kinder person. But I'm talking about the songs. Jack of All Trades. I was so thrilled that when I was at one of the Met shows, where he did that 3 set where, he's and he did it with strings. My stepfather was that guy, except for the last verse. He was someone who was very handy, worked in oil fields, was a mechanic, could fix anything in the house. And so when I first played it for Linda, she's like, God, it's Papa Kenneth. And I'm like, yeah. Then of course, at the end, if I had a gun, I'd shoot them all dead. She's like, oh my God, that took a nasty turn. So yeah, I love the Irish kind of feel of it. In fact, I bought this CD and I bought the Live in Dublin DVD, and there is Danny O'Flaherty is a Irish singer-songwriter that used to own a pub in New Orleans, but after Katrina, he ended up losing it. So he was playing at a small little coffee shop in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and we had talked to him, and he's like, oh, our friend's from Dallas. I can't do an Irish accent, but he's just very, and so I sent him that CD, and that because I said, I think there's a little tint of Irish folklore and everything in there. So I sent that to him to share him. And then I have to give this, Linda went to Big Bend, one of the parks here in Dallas, and dry camped and did a hike where you had to bring all your water. And she said that Rocky Ground kept going in her head every time she was walking on. We've been walking on Rocky Ground, Rocky Ground. So I once again, I really love the album, but I'm right there with you, Chris. I love American Land. I was so happy for a while when he was doing that as the encore song versus Shout. Nothing against Shout. That's, people who love Shout, that's fine. I am hoping that this next tour, they pick 4 or 5 from the cover album, and that's his, if he's going to do an encore, that they rotate through that would be a lot of fun. So, yeah, and I feel exactly like you did, Peter, about We Are Alive. I do think that is about Clarence, and that, you don't leave us, to the end. So really good stuff. So, any other thoughts before we get out of here?
I did want to mention, just talking about the anniversaries, what I found really interesting, and maybe you two can comment on why you think this might be. And Chris and I have talked about this a little bit. So within, a few weeks of each other, I put up tributes to Nebraska at the 40th anniversary. Then a few weeks later, Tunnel of Love at the 35th anniversary. And the Nebraska post, people were like, eh. Like it just wasn't much of a reaction. It's like, oh yeah, it's great. Like everybody knows it's great, and and that's that. When I put up the Tunnel of Love, people were effusive. They were like, "This is my favorite album. This album is great." As if like they were offended that it hadn't got the attention it deserved over the years. Whereas Nebraska, maybe people felt it's a known masterpiece, and well, that goes without saying, but they were so happy to see someone acknowledging, the brilliance of Tunnel of Love. So I'm just curious of both of yours takes on those 2 albums and why you think the reaction might have been so different.
Chris, you start, please.
All righty. Well, Nebraska is one of my, I would put it in the top 3. So I'm Nebraska over Tunnel of Love, but to take a shot in the dark on the love for Tunnel of Love is, I was re-listening to that album today in preparation of maybe you bring this up, Pete, and it dawned on me that I think out of Bruce's in his songwriting is always coming from a personal place, right? Like if you do anything artistic, there's always a vulnerable piece of yourself in the art that you're making. But I would stand to reason that Tunnel of Love may be the most directly vulnerable Bruce has ever been in his songwriting, and really afterwards, So all these songs we're talking about now, I think about how when he was on VH1 Storytellers, he was saying about Devils and Dust. How much was I thinking about it at the time? None of it. How much was I feeling at the time? All of it, right? So those songs, the political ones too, come from that emotion. But I think that the vulnerability that comes through on Tunnel of Love, and the fact that it is dealing with so openly things about relationships, and to the kind of tying this back on what you're saying earlier, marriage is work, and the work of marriage, the weight of expectations we set for ourselves in relationships, how we want to emulate the relationships in our lives, in our own marriages, and things that we don't want to do as well. Those are all things that we feel. Everybody feels, and I know that sounds cliche for pop songwriting, but the level of vulnerability makes it stand out in the way that the Nebraska, yeah, it's certified gold. It's a great. It solidified him. If you had any doubt before, he was new storyteller, songwriter. The writing's strong, but there was something about Bruce, who also being kind of a private person when it comes to his personal life. It was so much more telling to listen to that album. It was also coupled right after his biggest commercial success. So he had the whole world listening to him on what he wanted to say on that record. He knew that. And I think that the pop sensibilities of the music too, from that time, with the synths and the drum machines, and poor Max not being invited to play. But I think that sound also speaks to. I know it's my mom's favorite record. Let's put it that way. It's mom's, or at least my generation. Our moms grew up loving that record. I think that's all I have to say is, moms will carry the charts, especially when it comes to 80s love songs. So those are my 2 cents.
Yeah, I just had Mark Hornack on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and he and I did a breakdown of Nebraska, and he brought up, which I had not thought of, that he said after the autobiography and after Western Stars and especially Broadway, you listen to Nebraska in a different way because you know what demons he's fighting, and it makes you appreciate the album even more. And I did listen to it again with that thought, and it does give you some thoughts. I at least me, I was like, wow, I'm seeing this a little different way. And Abby, absolutely, you know, I'm going to do a generalization. Nebraska's the cool Springsteen album to like, right? Like if you're a punker or, you're rap or you're an other artist in a different genre, hey, I like Nebraska, Tunnel of Love would definitely be in my top 3 favorite albums. It, um, Pet Sound is this album when someone says, what is the album you listen to the most? I say Pet Sounds, and the album that I think is perfect is Pet Sounds. If we took away Ain't Got You, I might make the argument that Tunnel of Love is pretty close to that too. I have said this multiple times. I think you have to either have been in a marriage or a long-term relationship for a while or had your heart broken a few times before you get Tunnel of Love. And I think that is why that so many people appreciate this, because you hit a grand slam, then the next time you up, the perception is, oh, well, you got to walk, right? Or maybe a single because there was a field, the fielder melted error. And then when you look back, you go, no, this is actually in its own way just as brilliant as Born in the USA, which had all the multiple hits. It's a very personal album. There is, I think he had something to say. I do often think it's interesting that he and Patty do duets on these songs that he probably was writing about his ex-wife, but I guess we move on, right? Patty goes, hey, I won. It's okay. We've got 3 kids. But I know one of my live highlights was in Houston during the kind of High Hopes tour. And the same Matthew Icon, the one who said, hey, can I get up and play, out on the street with you? Or no, not out on the street. I'm drawing a blank. Sorry, Matthew. But he had the sign, do One Step Up. And the band in Houston did One Step Up without rehearsing it. And it was one of my highlights just to hear them do it. So yeah, I just love the album. And I think I would be one of those people too, Peter, that would go, oh, I love Tonal Love with Nebraska. Yeah, it's good. I'm just more passionate about Tunnel of Love.
Excellent evaluations, both of you. I appreciate the input.
So, all right, we're only a couple weeks away from getting new quote unquote music from Bruce. We're going to see how he styles and the different songs. I do know my partner in time, my co-host of my Doctor Who podcast, is not a big Springsteen fan. And when he heard this was going to be an album, he said, what's he doing? I'm kind of interested. And so I sent him the track list, and he specifically sent back in like, oh, I can't wait to hear this one, this one, this one. So it may be interesting that we get some of the different fans, the fan base expands a little bit to go, oh, we should do this. And I think there's another world where his version of Rhinestone Cowboy would get him nominated for a CMA. But that's not this world. All right. Any final thoughts?
Thank you as always, Jesse.
Oh,
This has been a pleasure.
This is so much fun. I love it all the time. Well, great. Chris, you're welcome anytime. Any final
Thank,
thoughts?
thank you. No, just gonna say thanks for opening the tent a little bit bigger and let me in.
Oh, always, always. It's great. Well, we will have to have you on again. I am thinking about doing a roundtable after the album's released and kind of throw open some thoughts. And so I can't wait to read your evaluation of it, Pete. That's going to be great. And so I think
I guess
listeners, tell us
that
what
means
you
I got to
think.
write one now.
Yeah, exactly. Listeners, tell us what you think. Keep us safe. For now, go get vaccinated, go get boosted, and let's all be kind to each other because that's how we'll get through it. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Peter. We'll talk to you soon. Goodbye. Doing a podcast at times can be a one-way conversation, and I hate that. So please let me know what you like and don't like about the work I'm doing. You can reach the podcast via email at setlistingbruce@gmail.com. The show is on Twitter at setlistingbruce, and my personal Twitter is at jessejacksondfw. You can support the podcast by subscribing via your favorite podcast player and leaving us a review. The more reviews we have, the easier it is for people to find us. And please tell a friend about the podcast, especially if they love Bruce or music, because it will make a difference. You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thinking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only Set Listing Bruce. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.